Do we know who this is? So, probably all of you know who this is. She mostly doesn't have any impact on your life. She's not affecting your day to day life, but you know who she is, right? How about this person? Do you know who that person is? Well, I'm betting that most of you don't know who that person is, and yet that person made a decision that resulted in you this year getting the largest student fee increase in the history of student fee increases in Nevada. That is the governor of the state of Nevada, who gave the faculty of the universities and colleges in Nevada raises, but then didn't give us any money to pay for them. And the result to that was they got paid for by student fee increases. Not at UNLV. Now, I need to be clear about this, just so if you get mad, I was chair of the faculty senate, and we made a deal so that we did not need the student fee increase. We could have survived just fine without the student fee increase. But the other campuses aren't as good at economics as I am, and they had to have a student fee increase to pay for COLA and some other things. There's more stuff going on in the NCHI than that. But the point is that the argument for the student fee increase would never have happened if this guy hadn't decided to give the faculty raises and then not give us the money to pay for them. Okay? So this guy actually affects your life. AOC, we may love AOC, but that doesn't mean she affects our lives on a day-to-day basis. She's in the minority party in the House of Representatives. She speaks up all the time, and all that's good, but she's not really affecting your life. But you know who she is. This person dramatically affected your life, and yet you may not know who he is. How about her? Well, she's the senator from the state of Nevada. She is making decisions that affect your life all the time, and yet you might not know who she is. You might not recognize her. How about this person? Well, that's Janet Yellen. She's the Secretary of the Treasury. We're going to talk about her before too long. She definitely affects your life, and yet you might not know who she is. How about her? Do you know who she is? Probably, but does she affect your life? Maybe not. Millennials, yeah, those people are more likely to get their news from social media or comedy news shows than to actual news media. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. People are like, oh, that's terrible, except that most of the news media we have right now isn't really news media. Before Ronald Reagan was president, which means before y'all was born, there was a thing called equal time provision. So there was a federal law, and it said news programs had to provide equal time to both sides. So if they had a Trump supporter on for 10 minutes, they had to have a Harris supporter on for 10 minutes. It had to be actually fair and balanced. They had to provide equal time to both sides. If they were talking about something that was on the ballot in Nevada, they had to put equal time to the pros and the cons people. They couldn't pick a side. But Ronald Reagan got rid of that, and since that time, news media has been able to pick a side. So people watch Fox, they get one side of the story. People watch MSNBC, they get another side of the story. There are a lot of news channels out there that don't give both sides. CNN has people on there who used to work for Trump, worked for other Republican presidents. They have people on there who worked for Obama. They have people on there who worked for Biden. They're trying at least to give you both sides of the story. But even so, people on the right argue that they're biased toward the left. People on the right seem to argue that all media is biased toward the left, even though the most watched TV news in America is very far right. So the answer here is, let me say the answer here is, you need to get your news from more than one source. And it needs to be sources that don't quote each other or use the same thing. You need to actually see what's going on. Yeah, so the point here is, again, we, generally speaking, don't put the time and effort in to learn about the candidates. And just to give you another crude example, the Board of Regents. 8 members of the Board of Regents are either have A, B, C, and D last names. So the theory is that to get elected to the Board of Regents now in Nevada, the first person on the ballot, in other words, the first person in the alphabet, is the one that most people vote for. They just go in there and vote for the first person on the ballot. That tells you that they're not putting in the time and effort, right? So that seems to emphasize what economists say about public choice theory, that the costs of actually looking at what's going on in politics exceed the benefits. And just so if people say to you, oh, UNLV liberal, if you know who that is, that's Tomi Lahren. She's a commentator on Fox, and she is a graduate of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, though she didn't take econ from me, which she should have done, I think. Interesting. Anyway, what's optimal behavior for a politician? And the answer is you need to maximize the chance you get elected or reelected. You're a vote maximizer. If you can't get elected in the first place or you can't get reelected, anything you do as a politician isn't going to eventually work to your benefit. So I put Richard Nixon up here. Hopefully we all know enough about our history to know that Richard Nixon bugged the Democrat. They broke into the Watergate office building to the Democratic National Committee, bugged them, won his re-election. That, if you know your history, the group that broke into the Watergate, the head of the thing was the Committee to Re-elect the President, which was Committee to Re-elect the President, CREEP. So it's kind of ironic that they named their organization CREEP, and then they ended up getting arrested, thrown in jail, some of them. Fortunately, Richard Nixon taped everything that he had in his office. That's why that's there. He taped everything that happened in his office, and except for one strange 18-minute gap, that got him almost impeached. He resigned before he got impeached and tried, and then was pardoned for whatever crimes he didn't commit. Gerald Ford just pardoned him just in case he had done something. But if you're a politician, your job is to get elected or reelected. Right? Your job isn't to make America something. Your job is to get elected or reelected. So again, rational ignorance. Do issues matter to voters? Do they know where candidates stand on issues? And the answer to that is usually sort of. And we'll talk about this a little more in a second. The answer to that is usually they know some issues and they know where their candidates stand on some things. But given that, rational ignorance, how do we elect people? Well, it turns out that the tall person almost always wins. If you go look at presidential elections, except for Al Gore, and Al Gore again won the popular vote and lost the presidency on a decision by the Supreme Court of the United States. But the tall person always wins the election, right? Go back in time, tall guy wins. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all these tall guys. Occasionally a short person like James Madison slides in there. But almost always the taller person wins. And the bald guy doesn't win. And speaking for bald guys, people should vote for us more, but people don't vote for bald guys. Looks and image are very important. When John Kennedy and Richard Nixon were competing against each other to be president in 1960, they were on television for the first time. That was the first debate that was ever televised. It was in black and white. You can go back and see it. I think it's on YouTube. I haven't looked. I didn't see it originally, but it should probably be on YouTube. Nixon didn't bother to get any makeup on to go on television. Fairly new medium. He didn't really know what he was doing. The people who saw it on TV thought that Kennedy won the debate. The people who actually saw the two of them and watched the two of them thought that Kennedy won. The people who just listened to it on the radio and couldn't see them thought that Nixon won. So again, looks, pretty important. Then marketing is just as important for politics as it is for anything else. And a lot of candidates who are successful have some kind of slogan or other thing that we remember. So I wrote, "There's a bear in the woods." There was a very successful advertising campaign for Ronald Reagan. The bear is Russia. There's a bear in the woods. This ad campaign was actually made by some people here in Las Vegas, an advertising company here in Las Vegas for Ronald Reagan. And it was an incredibly successful campaign, and it helped turn that whole election around. So there's marketing and presentation and all of these kind of things are at least as important and maybe more important than issues, because it's easy to watch an ad and see somebody and say, hey, that's a good person, that's a nice person, that's a person who would look good being the president. And it's easier for people to make decisions about that, right? That's a low-cost way to make your decision. So again, rational ignorance, there will be lots of people who are one-issue voters. Another easy way to lower your cost for you as an individual to decide who to vote for is to be a one-issue voter. Vote for who's the most green. Vote for someone because they're pro-life or pro-choice. Right? All kinds of different things. So candidates look for issues where a group, an identifiable group, gets a significant benefit, but that the costs of this are spread out among a bunch of people. So the people who get the benefits see the benefits, but all the people who pay costs don't see those costs as being huge. So if 10 people benefit and 1 million people pay for it, those 1 million people aren't going to notice the cost, but the 10 people will see the benefit. And those 10 people are going to vote for whoever that is. I put sugar up here because the United States has actually a lot of tariffs and other restrictions on foreign sugar coming into the United States. Sugar in the United States costs 3 to 4 times what it costs in the rest of the world because we restrict trade in sugar, and so the local sugar industry makes a lot of money because their prices are very high. So if we look at areas in the United States where they grow cane sugar, and C&H, the H is Hawaii. They used to advertise about all the sugar they grow in Hawaii. They don't grow sugar in Hawaii anymore. But if you're a sugar producer or in an area where there are sugar producers, any candidate who wants to continue the restrictions on sugar is going to be very popular, and any candidate that wants to open up sugar to global competition is not going to be very popular. So you find politicians looking for these one-issue voters, making an appeal to those one-issue voters, making sure that those voters understand that that candidate is on their side, and then you get those people willing to vote for you, and it doesn't turn anybody else necessarily off against you.